Although I wonder if the vice mayor is frozen.
Who's present? I think that's her.
Yeah, can you hear us, Margo?
I don't think so. Is she frozen?
It appears to be the case. Let's give her a minute to see if she can reboot.
Maybe someone can phone her and tell her, or maybe she's on her phone because this isn't on her normal picture. Oh, there she is.
Okay, we have movement now.
Hi, Margo.
Okay, I'm going to call to order this duly noticed and posted special meeting of the Capitola City Council. And let's begin with a roll call.
Councilmember Bertrand.
Present.
Councilmember Brooks.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Present.
Vice Mayor Kaiser.
Here.
And Mayor Story.
Here.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask if Councilmember Brown will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Brown. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Staff has no changes this afternoon.
Any additional materials?
No, Mayor Story, we did not receive any.
Okay, I'll go to oral comments by members of the public. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council on items that are not on today's agenda or that may be on the consent calendar, but noting that we have no consent calendar items for this special meeting. Are there any, if you would like to speak, just raise your hand in the Zoom application, or you can dial *9 and the moderator will give you up to 3 minutes to speak over the phone. Is there anyone that would like to address the council?
I see no members on Zoom. And Katie, do we have any emails? Sorry, Chloe.
That's okay. I'm not seeing any emails. Thank you.
Okay, seeing we have no oral communications by members of the public, we'll move on to staff and city council comments. Are there any staff comments?
No staff comments this afternoon.
Are there any city council comments? Seeing none, let's move on now to the business at hand, which is one item. Item 6A, which is to consider a short-term loan agreement with the County of Santa Cruz for the purpose of funding the purchase of the Watsonville Community Hospital. The recommended action is to adopt the proposed resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a short-term, which is not to exceed 60 days, loan agreement with the County of Santa Cruz in the amount of $5 million to assist the county's purchase of the hospital. Can we begin with the staff report? Good. Jamie, you are muted.
All right.
There we go. Okay, you want to go from the top?
Yeah, unfortunately, I had a little bit of a technical challenge there. Everything went dark for about a minute, but it came back. So give me a second here. Chloe, how does that look?
Looks great.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you everybody for this special meeting, making time available to attend today. We have in front of you a relatively interesting project that came together at the last minute here, and it is to help the county with the purchase of the Watsonville Community Hospital. Watsonville Community Hospital, as you may have known, is one of 2 hospitals in our county, and it has been managed by different for-profit operators over the last 21 years. Over that time, there's been significant management turnover, relatively consistent turnover at the hospital, which has created all sorts of challenges. The most recent ownership group is a private equity firm where they had a publicly traded real estate investment trust that owned the land and then leased the property back to the private equity firm that owned the hospital. This was this equity firm's first foray into the ownerships of hospitals, and it ended in December 2021 when the hospital filed for bankruptcy. When that occurred, the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District Project was formed, which includes leaders from the County of Santa Cruz, the City of Watsonville, Community Health Trust of Pajaro Valley, and Salud para la Gente. And this nonprofit formed to essentially buy the hospital, and they were approved by the bankruptcy court as the final bidder for the hospital itself. Concurrent with that, there was urgency legislation that was passed at a state level that formed the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District, which will ultimately have 5 elected board members. This first formation of the district has had 5 members that were appointed by the Board of Supervisors. And then what will happen here is once the acquisition is complete by the nonprofit, it will transfer ownership of the hospital to the district. And then the Watsonville Community Hospital will be just that, a community owned and operated hospital. As I mentioned before, it's only one of 2 hospitals that we have in this county. Depending on traffic, it can be quite a slog to get over the hill or get down to Monterey to get to the next nearest hospitals. The hospital provides patients with service in their preferred language, particularly for those without English language proficiency, and more newborns are delivered at the Watsonville Community Hospital than any other birthing center in the county. So Santa Cruz County secured $25 million in state funding to help aid in the purchase of the hospital. And due to a drafting error in the state budget, the state is unable to release that funding at this time. Unfortunately, the deadline to close escrow is coming up here in a couple of weeks, August 31st. And rather than going back to bankruptcy court and potentially reopening the entire complicated transaction, Santa Cruz County has reached out to significant community partners, including the city of Capitola, asking us each for a $5 million bridge loan to close that $25 million short-term gap while the state fixes their drafting error in the state budget. So the partners include the city of Santa Cruz, city of Watsonville, Santa Cruz Community Foundation, Salud para la Gente, and then Capitola. Based on my last update, my understanding is that the Community Foundation and Salud para la Gente have committed the funding. Capitola would be the first city, with Watsonville and Santa Cruz expected to be authorizing similar agreements early next week. The structure of the loan is a 60-day loan. The county has agreed to reimburse the city for the lost interest that we would have accrued at LAIF. The current LAIF rate, that's the Local Agency Investment Fund, which is where the city stores most of its funding. The current LAIF rate is 1.21. Our current balance in LAIF is over $12 million. And so we would be using $5 million of that to cover the short-term loan. The county has offered also to pay any transactional costs related to this short-term loan. The remaining cash balance of $7.3 million is more than sufficient to manage the city's cash flow coming up for this calendar year. You may recall that the city's cash flow doesn't come in every year on a smooth basis. And so our sort of low point, if you will, in our cash position is always sort of between November, sort of Thanksgiving, and about the middle of December. And then the loan agreement does include some language around a late payment penalty, just to ensure that if there is multiple errors at the state and the funding takes significantly longer than anticipated, the city does have a mechanism to ensure repayment. Frankly, though, I think that we're all trying to work towards getting this done. And as long as the city didn't need the funding and there was a clear plan around getting it done, I expect that penalty would be waived. So with that, the recommendation is to authorize the city manager to execute a short-term loan not to exceed 60 days. Agreement with the County of Santa Cruz in the amount of $5 million to assist in funding the county's purchase of the Watsonville Community Hospital. And this is pending availability of the additional $20 million from the remaining partners needed to complete the purchase. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Questions from council members?
And one other thing before I conclude, I will note that Santa Cruz County CAO Carlos Palacios is on our call and is available to answer any questions about the overall strategy or sort of where we're going from here.
Thank you for that, Jamie, and welcome, Carlos. Are there questions from council members? Seeing no hands up. Yeah, I see a live hand from Councilmember Bertrand. Go ahead, Councilmember Bertrand.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Carlos, for stepping up and helping the community and, bringing together all the agencies and eventually all the cities to make this loan. I really appreciate it. It's a great community service. And I do have a question. I don't expect a full answer, but I was just wondering if I could address you to Carlos. So there's been a recent bankruptcy, and so are there structural issues in the community hospital right now financially? And would this put, our investment, our community investment at jeopardy? Has there been some peer review of, basic structures there? From the finance standpoint, and also from business, or let's say the customers, the patients, is the number of patients coming sufficient to make the loan repayment? And why I understand the loan's going to be repaid other ways, but also so it doesn't go bankrupt. That's my main concern.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Bertrand, and thank you to the entire City Council and Mayor Storey for taking the time to have this special meeting and help out the community hospital in this final stage of realizing the purchase. To answer your question, the first thing is, remember, this loan is predicated on just the $25 million grant we're getting from the state of California.
Right.
And we would have the money right now. It's just that in the midst of their budget discussions, there was an error made in the drafting of the language that the staff at the state made, and that's why we can't get the money until an amendment is processed, which will happen at the end of this month. But it's too late to get the 25 million into the escrow for the finalizing the purchase. So the 25 million is very secure. The grant will come from the state. We're in touch with both the administration, the governor's administration, and the leadership of the Senate and the Assembly, and they're all assuring us the money will be on its way as soon as the budget is amended. Regarding the hospital, there are structural issues. There's a lot of issues there. One of them is the payer mix. 80% of the people who use the hospital at this point, or 50% are Medi-Cal, and another 30% are Medicare. Government payers tend to reimburse much less than commercial payers, so that payer mix is a big issue for them. But over time, they have a partnership with Kaiser, which will over time increase the amount of commercial insurance as well. The other thing is that we have worked with consultants over the last 6 months. The Paro Valley District Project, which is the nonprofit of which I sit on, along with 4 other community members, we secured funding to hire a number of the best medical system consultants to come look at the hospital. We also have developed a business plan to turn around their finances within a 1-year period. That business plan has been examined by the Salinas Valley Memorial Hospital staff, as well as Kaiser staff. And so we have good hope that the hospital will be in very good financial situation very quickly. So in any event, we could also, if you're ever interested, go over the financial plan with our consultants in the future.
Thank you, Carlos. And yeah, you've answered some of my questions. So with the district that's set up, would that at some point be called upon if there was shortfall issues?
Yeah, the new healthcare district will be the owner of the hospital on September 1. As soon as the sale is finished, they are going to be charged with managing it. There is no tax revenue in that district at this point, and we're trying to balance the budget purely on the operations of the hospital. And it is possible. Natividad, which is a county hospital in Monterey, actually has a balanced budget purely based on their operations. And Salinas Valley Memorial and also is a district hospital that has a balanced budget and is doing actually quite well with a very minimal, it's almost non-existent tax base. So it is possible, and we're hoping not to rely on the taxpayers, but to rely on the operations and cleaning up the operations of the hospital. There are a lot of things that the private owners did wrong over the last years. Remember, the hospital is 100 years old. Only 20 of those years was it owned by a private entity. And frankly, the private entity owned them was, for the last many years, was just taking the money out and not reinvesting back in the hospital. So we think that once that money is returned to the community, we'll be able to turn the operations around. And we have a very detailed business plan that, again, if we're ever interested in, we'd be happy to have, once the district owns the hospital, to give a presentation to you or your city council members about that business plan. Because the hospital, as you all realize, is critical to the overall medical system of the entire county. That's one of only 2 emergency rooms. 40% of all emergency visits go to Watsonville Hospital. If that emergency room were to close, frankly, we would be in a crisis very quickly in this county with regard to emergency services. So we all know this is critical. I appreciate your help, and the business plan is very detailed, and it's going to be difficult, but we're confident they're going to be able to turn it around.
Thank you, Carlos, for answering those questions. And again, I appreciate your efforts and all those who helped you to make this happen.
And are there other questions from council members? Okay, seeing one, Carlos, I wanted to ask, when do you anticipate that the state budget amendment will take place?
They will pass it by August 31st. That's their deadline. So we're assuming they will pass it. The governor would sign it very quickly thereafter. And we anticipate getting the money back within a couple of weeks. So we're hoping by mid-September to have the 25 million from the state dispersed, and then we would be able to pay back all the loans.
Okay. And I just wanted to ask of staff, is there any reason why this loan agreement should not have an attorney's fees clause included with it?
I think I'll defer to the city attorney on that.
Did you mean an attorney's fees clause for drafting or attorney's fees clause if there were some sort of litigation about it?
The latter, concerning litigation.
No, we could certainly include one. I'll be honest with you and tell you that it was drafted quickly, and certainly Mr. Palacios could jump in here as well. My guess is that in the drafting, there was not much thought that this would lead to any litigation such that we would need an attorney's fees clause. Fine to put one in, better to be safe than sorry. I think also due to the limited duration of the loan, there wasn't thought that it would lead to any sort of litigation.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. And my last question is, Carlos, would it create any issues if we made our approval conditioned upon the city of Santa Cruz and the city of Watsonville also approving the loan?
I don't think that would be an issue. I fully expect them all to approve the loan. And, frankly, the county could have gone out and got a private sector loan for this. But the cost of such a loan, even for a 30 to 60-day loan, was more than $250,000. And that's all, this is a community project. This is not a county hospital. The only thing we are doing is serving as the conduit for the $25 million. So we're really doing this just to help the community. And it really burned me to spend $250,000 for a 30-day loan just because of a drafting error that's really should belong to the community.
Yeah.
So I think the other cities will come along, and I don't have any issue about conditioning it on their approval.
Okay. Thank you for that. And seeing no other council questions, I'll now go out to the public and see if there's any member of the public that would like to address the council on this item. If you do, please raise your hand in Zoom, or you can dial *9 and you'll be given up to 3 minutes to speak.
I see no participants on Zoom with their hand raised. And clerk,
I see no emails.
Okay, we have no public comment. I'm going to close that portion of the meeting. I'll bring it back to council for further deliberation and action. Is there any council members that would like to begin?
I feel confident with making the recommendation with the proviso that the other cities, Scotts Valley and Watsonville, also contribute.
Okay, I saw Councilmember Brooks had her hand up, but now it's gone. And just to clarify, Councilmember Bertrand, were you making a motion?
Yeah, I should have said I'm making a motion with the proviso that Watsonville and Scotts Valley also put in their 5 million.
Would you also be willing to consider an amendment to have the loan agreement include an attorney's fees clause, as we discussed?
Yeah, I didn't see Carlos Basalis disagreeing with that idea. Okay, include those two provisions. The cities requiring will agree when they pay their 5 million also, and also the lawyer fee clause.
And Mayor Story, if I could just be clear, I think you're requesting a provision that states that if there is any litigation about any of the items covered by the agreement, the recovering party would recover, or the prevailing party would recover its attorney's fees.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So
Thank
moved.
you for that clarification. So
Thank
we
you
have
so
a
much.
motion. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Can we just restate? So the motion on the table is to authorize the city manager to execute the short term, depending on whether or not the city of Santa Cruz and the city of Watsonville approve. Is that
No,
that
Scotts
what you-
Valley and Watsonville.
No, not Scotts Valley. It's the
Did I
city
get
of
wrong?
Santa Cruz and the city of Watsonville.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Yvette, for clarifying that.
okay? And were those the only two pending that we're waiting for, Carlos?
Yes, the Community Foundation and Salud para la Gente have already approved $5 million short-term loans in the same, pretty much the same provisions that were proposed to you.
Okay, and are there any fees associated with adding that language from our attorney onto this that we need to be aware of? The part, Sam, Mayor Story, that you wanted to add? Is there any cost to us for drafting that up?
Oh, I would imagine it would just be the minimal cost of writing 2 sentences, and so.
Okay, so with that motion on the table with ensuring it was Watsonville and Santa Cruz, I'll second that motion.
Council, we have a second from Councilmember Brooks. Does anyone want to speak to the motion at this time? Seeing none, I think I would just like to, thank Carlos and the county for all the hard work that they've done to be able to, secure the survival of the Watsonville Hospital. And I think this is an opportunity for us at really no risk and cost. This loan doesn't affect our balance sheet at all. We're going to be fully held harmless, but it gives us an opportunity to secure the Watsonville Hospital, which I think is essential to really the public health of the entire county and for the residents of the city of Capitola. So I think that there is a direct benefit to the Capitola residents in taking this action, and we can play really, I think, a supportive and helpful role without, really incurring any risk in this. The risk of operations are not going to be ours, and it sounds like that the money will be coming from the state in a very short time. So, with that, I will fully support the motion, and I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Bertrand,
I agree.
Councilmember Brooks,
Aye.
Councilmember Brown,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kaiser.
Aye.
Mayor Story.
Aye. The
Thank you.
motion passes unanimously. I think we have no other agenda items for this special meeting. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting to our next regularly scheduled meeting on October 25th at 7 p.m., which will be held live there in council chambers. And with that, I'll close by thanking you again, Carlos, for your work. And thank you, Jamie, for bringing this to our attention. And thank you, Samantha, for preparing the paperwork, and Jim for reviewing our cash flow status and ability to make this loan. And that I'll say to everyone, be kind to yourself and be kind to others. And with that, I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.